A very good morning, guys. In this session, we are going to start with a new subject what you all are going to study for the first time. This is a common subject for SYBAF, SYBCOM, as well as majority part of the subject is also covered in BMS. Now, for BAF and BCom, there is shuffling of semester. BCom students have this in semester 3 and BAF students have this in semester 4. And a part of this is also there in SYBMS semester 3. Now, what is the subject? The name of the subject is management accounting. The name of the subject is management accounting. And take my words, you all have studied accounts right from SYBC. This year you all have studied account. Next year also you all are going to study account. And if you all go for further studies after graduation, still you all will study accounts. So whatever you are going to study, as far as the level of degree college is concerned, take my words, level of degree college is concerned, you will find this subject, as one of the most easiest and the most boring part. This is the most easiest subject of all different types of accountings. You call it as financial accounting, cost accounting, financial management, and management. Okay, guys. So now, getting into the subject. The name of the subject, management accounting. Accounting, you all know, you all are doing since FYGC. FYGC, SYGC, we used to call it as bookkeeping and accountancy. Degree college में, BCom में, we used to name it as accountancy and financial management. And back me, we call it as financial accounting, what you all have studied. Now, management accounting. Accounting, you all know. Now, when I say management accounting, what do you mean by the word management? Management, basically, simple word mein, it refers to the set of people who are managing the business. When I say management, those people who take important and crucial business decisions are termed as management. If it is a sole trading concern, one single person doing business, that person is the management. If it's a partnership firm, the co-owners, the partners, they are termed as management. When it comes to companies, you all know very well, you all have studied in FYGC, OCSP also. When it comes to companies, company is owned by the shareholders. Company is owned by the shareholders and managed by set of people which we call it as directors. Company is owned by the shareholders and managed by set of people called as directors. So directors are the people who take important decisions, but their important decisions, whatever they take, will be implemented wherever required after the consent is received of the owner, that is shareholder. But directors become the management. So, simple words mein, there are legal definitions there, but simple words mein, accounting, which is done from the point of view of management, is management accounting. What do you have to do now? Bookkeeping and accountancy and financial accounting, what we do, we actually record the transaction. Whatever transaction we do, we record in the books of accounts. Management accounting comes into picture after bookkeeping and accountancy, after financial accounting is done. इसमें क्या करना है? You have to pick up the data which is made under financial accounts and you have to do the analysis. There are different types of analysis. I am coming to that. You have to do the analysis in such a way that the management from that analysis are able to take important key business decisions. That is management accounting. Okay, so management accounting means taking important decisions on the basis of analysis and interpretation. Interpretation, analysis means different types of calculation made, and interpretation means on the basis of the calculation made to take decisions or to make conclusions. That is management accounting. Okay, guys. Now listen. Back we come. The first chapter what you all have is Introduction to Management Accounting. The first chapter what you all have is Introduction to Management Accounting, which is a pure theory chapter. That I will give you all the theory along with the markings, and I'll give you the brush up. Right now, I'm not getting into that. So after discussing the basic gist of management accounting, now we take the second chapter of your syllabus. Again, I'm repeating. First chapter is Introduction to Management Accounting, which is a pure theory chapter. I'm keeping that on hold right now. I'm starting with the practical part, where we will start with the second chapter. Second chapter ka name is Analysis and Interpretation of Accounts. Right now only I told you what do you mean by analysis and interpretation. Now guys, listen very carefully. This chapter is divided into 4 parts. This chapter is divided into 4 parts, or you can also call it as this chapter is divided in 2 chapters. I'll tell you what. Now see, first part of this chapter is vertical financial statements, which I am going to start in this session. First part is vertical financial statements. Now you all know financial statement. You all are studying this since SYBCOM. Financial statements में क्या आता है? What you prepare while making final account. बोलो हम लोग क्या बनाते? What we do is we make, you all are doing since SYBCOM, trading and profit and loss account. And the next thing what you all are doing is balance sheet. Okay, trading and profit and loss account and balance sheet. So this part is further divided in 2 parts. Vertical profit and loss, vertical balance sheet. Vertical matlab what? What you all have done in SYBCOM and FY first year degree mein, used to make balance sheet, liabilities, asset T form में, trading P&L, debit, credit. Vertical में there is no T format, there is no debit, credit. Vertical में क्या होता है? You have to list all the financial statement items one below the other without having any debit, credit. वो कैसे करने का? I will come into that in some time. Okay. So first part is vertical financial statements, which is further divided in 2 parts. Income statement, that is vertical profit and loss, and vertical balance sheet. What I am going to start today, of course I will discuss the other part also with you, will be, I will be starting with balance sheet, and in this session I will not be doing any sums, but I will be discussing the full format of vertical balance sheet. That is my agenda for this particular session. Okay, so first part 1, vertical financial statements, divided into 2 parts: income statement, trading P&L and balance sheet. Next is part 2 of this chapter. This is divided in 3 parts. So the 3 parts are, one is common size statement, other is comparative statement, and the third is trend analysis. Okay, common size statement, comparative statement, trend analysis. Now officially as per the syllabus, this is in 4 parts. Vertical financial statement, they have termed it as 1 part. common size second, comparative third and trend fourth. In short, ये चारों करने का. Now you call it as 4 different chapters. You call it as 2 chapters with 5 parts. Whatever you want to define, you define. In short, we have to do net 5 parts. कैसे? Vertical financial statements into trading P&L and balance sheet, and next common size, comparative and trend analysis. Got it? Now this will be doing later on. So now I am starting with the main thing, what I told you, vertical financial statement. When I say main thing, मतलब ये भी main है, but जो मैंने part 2 में बोला ना, you cannot do part 1, part 2, you cannot do part 1 without doing you cannot do part 2 without doing part 1, because what I'll be doing here, vertical financial statements में, the same format is applicable for the second part, common size, comparative and trend, where 50 to 60% of the sum has to be solved in the same way how we do here. Only thing is there will be extra calculations done for a separate objective of analysis. वो objective क्या है, that we will see when we come to that particular part. But before that, we will have to do this. Now see, when I say this, as I told you, this is in 2 parts. But when we solve the chapter, there will be a third part. कैसे? First, profit and loss. Second, balance sheet. Of course, I'll be starting with balance sheet, and later on, there will be combined sums on both. That means they may ask you either sums only on balance sheet, they may ask you sums either only on income statement, or they can ask you on combined. Okay? So now guys, now after giving you the brief of the chapters, the first 2 chapters, now we start with the first part, that is vertical financial statement. And what I am going to do right now will be the first part, that is Proforma of balance sheet. 2 minutes I will explain you, then I will pause the video, I will make columns on the board, and I will discuss the full format. I will give you the main headings, I will discuss one by one each item. The picture of that will be available to you. I am attaching below the video in the form of PDF, and students can easily get the full format, because पूरा format, detail format बनाने के लिए board कम पड़ेगा. So I'll just give you a brief in 2 minutes, and then I'll pause the video, I'll make the format, and I'll be back. Okay? So part 1, vertical financial statements, उसका first part, Proforma of balance sheet, or you can call it as Proforma of vertical balance sheet. Call it as vertical balance sheet. Proforma of vertical balance sheet. Okay? Proforma of vertical balance sheet. Now guys, listen. You all have studied balance sheet, correct? You all are preparing balance sheet right from SYBCOM till now. How we make balance sheet? Balance sheet अपना कैसे बनता है? We make it in T format, correct? This is T. What is it looking as T? Left side is what? Liabilities. Right side is assets, correct? This is the way you all have prepared balance sheet. Liabilities and assets. This is your financial accounting, bookkeeping and accountancy. Now what will be there in a question? 80% to 90% of the sums, this balance sheet will be prepared and given to you in the question. This balance sheet will be prepared and given to you in the question, and on the basis of this, you have to prepare vertical balance sheet. In 15 to 20% of the cases, they will give you items one below the other, and in 80 to 85% cases, they will give you balance sheet prepared. So we have to convert that into vertical format. Now listen, normal balance sheet में 2 parts. Which are the 2 parts? Liability and assets. Now in vertical, this will be out. In vertical, this will be out. Vertical में your balance sheet will be divided in two parts. First part will be sources of funds. First part will be sources of funds. I'll tell you what it is. And second part will be application of funds. And second part will be application of funds. Instead of liabilities and assets, there will be sources of funds and application of funds. Instead of liability and assets, there will be sources of funds and application of funds. Now guys, understand, very interesting. Sources of funds. When I say funds, simple language में funds means money. Of course, if we go in deep, there are other things also, but right now just keep in mind funds is money. When I say sources मतलब पैसा कहाँ से आ रहा. Sources मतलब from where you got the money. Now guys, when I say sources now, this is in two parts. There can be only two sources. या तो खुद का पैसा है, खुद का घर का पैसा, you are using owners funds, मतलब shares. In case of companies, they issue shares, so that is owner का money. So either own money or the money which you have borrowed. If I say मेरे पास पैसा है, there are only two ways. या तो खुद का पैसा है, खुद का कमाया हुआ पैसा है, या डैड ने दिया है, और मैंने किसी से borrow किया. There is no other source of money. Either own funds or the fund which is borrowed. So sources means पैसा कहाँ से आ रहा है, which is in two parts, owners funds and borrowed funds. In the format I will show in detail. Second thing is application of funds. Application of funds means जो पैसा है owners fund plus borrowed funds, वो कहाँ यूज किया, where I have applied. Suppose I say मेरे पास 50 लाख रुपया है, okay, I have total 50 lakhs, खुद का पैसा plus borrowed funds. So ये जो मेरे पास 50 lakhs है, वो मैंने कहाँ पे अप्लाई किया, where I have applied that is application of funds. And because it is a balance sheet, your sources of funds and application of funds has to tally. That means my application का total has to be 50 lakhs. Straight, it's but obvious. When we are preparing balance sheet, it has to tally. यहाँ पे liability और assets tally होना चाहिए. यहाँ पे sources of funds and application of funds tally. That is the concept. Now, as I told you, sources में there were two parts. खुद का पैसा owners fund, दूसरे का पैसा borrowed funds. Application में there are three parts. Just listen when I am doing the full format of both. Application में three parts. First, fixed assets. First is fixed assets. Second will be investments, that is long-term investments. And third will be working capital. First, fixed assets. Second, investments, that is long-term. Third, working capital. आगे जाके you all have a separate, in this semester only, both BCom back, you all have a separate chapter called as working capital. Working capital, I don't know how many of you all recollect of SYJC. Working capital is a difference between current assets and current liability. Now, what is current asset, what is current liability, I will discuss in detail when I draw the format. So, in short, before I get into the format, instead of normal balance sheet of liability and asset, here it will be vertical, divided in two parts, sources and application. Sources in two parts, owners funds, borrowed funds, उसमें भी in depth detail I'll explain you. An application in three parts, fixed assets, long-term investments and working capital. Now, what are these individual parts of sources and application? We will get into detail. What I'll do, guys, I'll just pause the video, I'll just make the format, and then I will put the items, main headings, discuss the breakup with you all, and I'm attaching a picture so that you'll get an idea of all items of balance sheet. Okay, I'll just be back, guys. Okay, guys, starting with the discussion of the format. Now, the remaining part of this session, I will be discussing the entire format of the balance sheet. I'm not solving any sum because till the time you don't understand the format, you cannot do any sum. And I mentioned some time back, again I'm repeating, this not only is important from this chapter point of view, but the second part, common size comparative trend. If you don't know vertical balance sheet, if you don't know vertical P&L, you cannot do that also. So keep in mind, this is the base not only for this first part of this chapter, but also for the next three parts. Okay guys, chalo. Now, understand this carefully. I will discuss in detail the format and पूरा 3 pages का detail बनाया हुआ format I'll be attaching in the form of PDF. Okay, चलो, let's start. Now what I told you, normal balance sheet in two parts, liabilities and assets. यहाँ पे कौन से दो part है? What I told you right now, sources of funds and application of funds. So come to particulars. See, this will be the format. Particulars and 3 columns of amount. I'll make 3 columns only. Why? You will know in some time. So your format will be heading de dena, Proforma vertical balance sheet. Vertical balance sheet of dash 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 as on dash dash dash. Particulars and 3 columns of amount. This will be the format. You all can make it 2 pages. If you want pura 3 pages kar do. Or what you can do, make this abhi mat likho. Understand जो PDF है, that you can copy paste. So right now, make format. If you want to write whatever I am writing, you write. Otherwise, just sun lo. After that, you can just copy paste the PDF in your own handwriting, whichever way you are comfortable. You want. Okay, but understanding is more important. So the first part of balance sheet, vertical balance sheet, as I told you, sources of funds. पैसा कहाँ से आता है? So what you will do? It will start with that. Full capital block letters में give the heading sources of funds. Full capital block letters में give the heading sources of funds. ठीक है, as I told you, लिखना है तो मेरे साथ लिखो, otherwise you can just understand. बाद में एक साथ PDF में से copy paste कर देना. But please write in your own handwriting, it will be easier for you all to remember. Now what I told you, sources of funds means खुद का पैसा. Sources of funds means पैसा कहाँ से आया. Now when I say from where the money is coming in, there are only 2 sources. या तो खुद का पैसा या तो the money which you have borrowed. So in this, the first part will be, we call it as, the common word used is proprietors funds. I'll write all the 3 words. Proprietors funds. It is also called as shareholders funds, because for companies the owners are shareholders, or the alternate word is owners funds. Okay, I'll repeat. Sources का first part, sources मतलब पैसा कहाँ से आ रहा है, and the first source is your own money, खुद का पैसा. So we call it as proprietors slash shareholders slash owners. You can use any of the 3 words. The reason why I have written proprietors fund, now we will use the word proprietor only when we start the sum. The reason is, in this same only you have a chapter called as ratios. वहाँ पे there is a ratio called as proprietary ratio, and other ratios में also you have to use the word proprietors fund. So that is the reason I will use the word proprietors fund. But it's okay. You can use any of the 3 words, or even if you write like that, all 3 it is fine. Okay. So sources मतलब पैसा कहाँ से आया, and the first source is owners funds, shareholders funds, proprietors funds. Now this proprietors share funds is further divided in 3 parts. Let's take one by one. सबसे पहला part, share capital. सबसे पहला part, share capital. If it is conversion of sole trader or partnership, which is very rare, then we only call it as capital. But 98% of the sum you all have of companies only, so we use the word share capital. Okay, so proprietors funds ka first part, share capital. Now you all are doing since FYJC, SYJC in OCSP also. What is share capital? The money which the company collects from its owners, the shareholders, they use that money in the business. That is share capital. You all know classification. Share capital is further classified in two categories. First, preference share capital. Second, equity share. Preference, equity. Company may issue preference, may not issue preference, but equity every company is issued also. There are advantages and disadvantages of that. Now, what is the major difference between preference and equity? Not required to know here, but we will discuss. Preference shares and equity shares. Preference shares have two preferences, two priorities over equity shares. First, preference shareholders get fixed rate of dividend. You all have done it in SYBCOM. Preference shareholders get a fixed rate of dividend. Equity shareholders do not get a fixed rate of dividend. They may get low rate, they may get a very high rate, they may get an average moderate rate, or they may not get dividend at all. So preference shares ke liye one good thing is that they are entitled for fixed rate of dividend. Second, when it comes to winding up means closing the company, liquidating the company. BAF and BCom both students, TY BAF, TY BCom, you will have a separate chapter called as liquidation of companies. There you will study in detail. So when a company, make it simple, when a company closes down, when it comes to repaying, प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स को पैसा पहले मिलेगा, उसके बाद बचेगा तो इक्विटी को मिलेगा. प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स विल गेट देयर मनी फर्स्ट. आफ्टर दैट इफ स्टिल देयर इज मनी इट विल बी गिवन टू इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर. और उसके बाद अगर ज़्यादा पैसा भी बचता है तो वो पूरा का पूरा को इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर्स को जाएगा. सो प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर्स हैव दैट एडवांटेज, but at the same time if there is extraordinary surplus then that will be given to equity shareholders. There also there are different kinds of preference shares, but in this chapter that is not relevant. Okay, so now see, share capital में two parts, preference and equity. So how we will write it? Again I am repeating, लिखना है तो लिखो, otherwise just understand. Share capital में preference share capital and equity share capital. Okay, now listen, या तो दोनों रहेगा या तो only equity. It is practically not possible to have only preference and not equity. So what you will do, if both are there, you will put the amount in the first column. If both are there, you will put the amount in the first column and total you will take it in the second column. जो third column है ना, third column is to write the final answer of proprietors funds. Third column is to write the final answer of proprietors funds. So preference share capital, equity share capital, both are there, put it in the first column, take the total outside second column, and if there is only equity shares, you can straight away put it in the second column. You can straight away put it in the second column. Okay guys, now listen, very rare there are sums where there are certain adjustments to be made here. Now you all have done issue of shares in SYJC, correct? SYJC में you all had issue of shares का chapter. Now you make a call to the shareholders, correct? You make a call to the shareholders. So when I make a call, what is call? It is an installment which is pending. First call, second call. Now, say for example, a particular shareholder has to pay you 10,000 rupees. उसने अभी तक भरा नहीं. That means उसका call money which he is supposed to pay is in arrears. याद है ना? Calls in arrears means that money which a shareholder is supposed to pay towards his liability of share capital, but he has not yet paid. Calls in arrears means that part of the liability of a shareholder which he is supposed to pay towards his share capital. Now, if on the date of balance sheet, when you prepare the balance sheet, a shareholder has not paid the call money, that will be shown as calls in arrears, and that calls in arrears will be deducted from share capital. That calls in arrears will be deducted from share capital. अगर इक्विटी शेयर कैपिटल का कॉल्स इन अरियर्स है तो उसको इक्विटी में से माइनस करना, फर्स्ट माइनस करना, एंड इफ इट इज प्रेफरेंस शेयर का कॉल्स इन अरियर्स उसको प्रेफरेंस में से माइनस करना. ओके, आई एम नॉट राइटिंग एवरीथिंग ऑन द बोर्ड, आई एम जस्ट राइटिंग मेन आइटम्स. गॉट इट? सो शेयर कैपिटल में in case there is any calls in arrears, then that calls in arrears will be deducted from. One more thing, you all have done in SYGC only, same chapter, issue of shares, accounting for shares. You forfeit shares. What is forfeiture? Forfeiture means cancelling the shares. When you cancel the shares, जब भी calls in arrears होगा, जैसे I give an example, a particular shareholder is supposed to pay 10,000, मतलब उसका total shares का value है say 50,000, 50, of which he has paid 40 and 10 he has not paid. So that 10 will appear here as calls in arrears to be deducted from share capital. Now the company will give him reminders to pay that 10,000. Company will give him reminders to pay that 10,000. उसने पैसा दिया, fine. अगर नहीं दिया, he will be given reminders. If he doesn't pay that 10, he will be given reminders. And on reminder, he will have to pay. In spite of repeated reminders, if the shareholder doesn't pay, his shares are cancelled. That is called as share forfeiture. Share forfeiture means cancellation of shares. Now, in the example what I gave you, उसका total amount of share capital was 50,000. उसमें से उसने 40 पे किया, 10 पे नहीं किया. Now there is a provision, company has the power. अगर वो 10,000 नहीं पे करता तो उसका जो तुम्हारे पास 40,000 है, you cancel it, उसको रिफंड नहीं करना है, वो तुम्हारा पैसा है. उसको रिफंड नहीं करना है, वो तुम्हारा पैसा है. So that money will be added to share capital. So share forfeiture will be added to share capital. It is very rare, very hardly there are some, but hardly are there where there is share forfeiture and calls in arrears. So if there are calls in arrears, we will deduct from share capital, and if there is share forfeiture, we will add it. कैसे add less करना है? When we come to that particular sum, that time. So share capital will be in preference, equity, and if there adjustment of calls in arrears which will be deducted, and share forfeiture will be added. After deducting calls in arrears if any, after adding share forfeiture if any, this figure will be the final figure of share capital, not proprietors funds. Okay, proprietors funds divided in 3 parts. Pehla, share capital. Second, to the amount of share capital. To the amount of share capital, you will add a heading called as reserves and surpluses. You will add a heading called as reserves and surpluses. Now, what do you mean by reserves and surpluses? Reserve and surpluses are nothing but basic. You all have done it in SYGC, common size comparative vertical. The same chapter you all had in SYGC also, but it was a very basic level. Reserve and surplus means reserves and surpluses. That means past profits created by the company which are in reserve. हम लोग कैसे घर पे इमरजेंसी में डैडी पैसा साइड पे रखते हैं ना, तुम्हारे एजुकेशन के लिए, तुम्हारी शादी के लिए, या कुछ इमरजेंसी आया, पैसा साइड पे रखते हैं, that is one example of reserves. So reserves and surplus means profits kept aside either for a general purpose or a specific purpose. Reserves and surplus means profits kept aside either for a specific purpose or general purposes. There are different types of reserve. You all have studied in SYBCOM also. All the reserves will be listed one below the other. I'll tell you the names also. And you will put the amount in the first column and uska total will come in the second column. All the reserves will come in the first column, uska total second. Now, different types of reserves are there. Free reserve, non-free. Free means you can use it for any purpose. Non-free means you can use it only for a specific purpose. ये chapter में तुम्हें वो याद नहीं रखना. So, what are the reserves? I'm just mentioning one by one. लिखना है तो लिखो, otherwise you can wait. General reserve, profit and loss, capital reserve, capital redemption reserve, dividend equalization reserve. You all have done it in SYGC when you issue shares at a premium, security premium. All these are examples. When you all will be getting a chapter in financial account, redemption of debentures. When you issue debentures, अभी आएगा वो secured loan में. आगे जाके you have to repay. So when you repay, you have to keep aside money. That is called as debenture redemption fund reserves. Every reserve has a specific meaning. Right now, at this stage, there is no need to go in detail. Okay? So I'll repeat few items: general reserve, reserve fund, profit and loss, capital redemption reserve, capital reserve, revaluation reserve, dividend equalization reserve, security premiums. All are different types of reserves. Getting it? So what you will do? All the reserves amounts you will put it in the first column and you will take the total in the second column. Third column में अभी amount नहीं जाएगा. Okay? So I'll repeat. First part of proprietors fund share capital. To that, add reserves and surpluses. I give you the list. Picture में भी attached है, पूरा detail list दिया हुआ है. And take the total. Now guys, listen. What you will do? What I told you. Proprietors funds का 3 parts. Now take the total of this and this. Total मतलब when you write do the sum, जो actual total है. This plus this will come here. Second column में, third में नहीं जाएगा. Now what you will do? From this total, you will deduct something called as miscellaneous expenditure, and brackets में you will write to the extent not written off. Brackets में you will write to the extent not written off. Miscellaneous expenditure, brackets में to the extent not written off. Now guys, see, when I say miscellaneous expenditure, we also call it as fictitious asset. You all have done it in FYJC in theory. Expenditure divided in 3 parts: capital, revenue, deferred revenue. Deferred revenue is a category of miscellaneous expenditure. इसमें क्या होता है? You are incurring an expense. It is not an asset. It is an expense which you have incurred, but the benefit of that expense you will get over a number of years. Benefit of that you will get over a number of years. FYGC का level and even SYBAF. SYBAF, SYBCOM and last year you have done na? Capital revenue, deferred revenue. If you do the building ka painting, if your office premises you get it paint every year, it is revenue. If you paint once in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it is deferred revenue. Miscellaneous expenditure. Workers को every year uniform दोगे, revenue. But you give workers uniform once in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it is deferred revenue. Other examples: preliminary expenses. Preliminary means expenditure incurred at the starting. It can be start of the business or expenses incurred at the time of issuing shares, issuing debentures, all these are missing. When I issue shares, I take help of underwriters. TY में you all have a chapter called as underwriting commission, underwriting type chapter. Underwriters are the people who help you get money towards share capital. उनको commission देना पड़ता है. So that is a part of miscellaneous expenditure. देखो preliminary expenses, discount on issue of shares and debentures, underwriting commissions. Then you have share issue expenses. All these are miscellaneous expenditure. Now guys listen, one very important point. Reserve and surplus में मैंने तुम लोगों को बोला एक item profit and loss. Now profit and loss यहाँ पे भी आ सकता है, यहाँ पे भी आ सकता है. Profit and loss यहाँ पे भी आ सकता है and यहाँ पे. कैसे? Heading is what? Reserves and surpluses. If the company is making profits, it goes under reserve and surplus. लेकिन अगर कंपनी लॉसेस पे जा रहा है, there is continuous loss, then that loss का balance will be shown as miscellaneous expenditure. SYGC में क्या है? There are few sums where P&L asset side पे आता था. अगर P&L तुम्हारा asset side पे होगा in the question का balance sheet, it will come here. And if your P&L profit and loss is on the liability side, it will come as reserve and surplus. So reserve and P&L on the liability side means the company has created surplus, and P&L on the asset side means fictitious losses. Got it? So what you will do? If there is only one item, you will put it in the second column. If there are 2, 3, put it in the first. Take the total in the second column. Now guys, listen. After that, this is what? Total of share capital and reserves. From this, deduct miscellaneous expenditure. From this, deduct miscellaneous expenditure. And this final amount, what remains, is your proprietor's funds. This final amount, as I told you, third column में final amount ही आएगा. So this is the answer of proprietor's funds. Proprietor's funds कैसे आया? Share capital, add reserves and surpluses, minus fictitious asset, that is miscellaneous expenditure, brackets में to the extent not written off. Now see, why I have written this word? Not written off मतलब that part which is yet to be written off will remain here. जो write off हुआ है current year में, that will go in P&L. How we do? Every year fixed assets, machinery में से हम लोग depreciation minus करते हैं. FYGC का basic, machinery का depreciation, deduct from machinery, debit P&L. So that is the part of machinery written off which has gone in P&L. अभी suppose मेरा machinery 5 lakh है, current year का depre 1 lakh है. So what we do in the balance sheet? 5 lakh में से 1 lakh minus किया, that 1 lakh goes in P&L. 4 lakh बचा, that 4 lakh is not written off. So that amount of the expense or the asset which is not written off, that comes in balance sheet. So here, that part of miscellaneous expenditure which is written off, that will go in P&L, and which is to be written off in the next or the future years, that will be the balance sheet. And as I told you, proprietors funds will be share capital plus reserves and surpluses minus miscellaneous. Got it? So sources are two parts, proprietors funds first, and now I take the second part. And proprietors में, again I'll repeat, proprietors is the first part of sources. उसमें 3 parts, share capital plus reserve and miscellaneous. Now coming to the second part. What I told you, there are 2 sources ना, एक खुद का पैसा, and the second what you have borrowed. So the second part will be borrowed funds. Now listen, इसमें भी there are alternatives. Borrowed funds will also be called as loan funds, or it will also be called as owed funds. It will also be called as owed funds. Borrowed funds, loan funds, owed funds. Now see here, owners funds और own W आता है, इसमें W नहीं आएगा. Owed मतलब what I am supposed to owe somebody. मैंने किसी से पैसा लिया है, वो मुझे रिटर्न करना है. That is my borrowed funds or owed funds. Clear? So sources in two parts. First, proprietors funds or shareholders funds or owners funds. Second, borrowed, loan or owed funds. Now proprietors fund में three parts है ना, share capital, reserves, less miscellaneous. Now here there are two parts. First is secured loan. Now first is secured loan. Now listen. When I say secured loan, now today if you go to a bank to take a loan, तुम बैंक में गए लोन लेने को, बैंक is not going to give you a loan like that only. बैंक will not give you loan like that. They will ask for some security. तुम्हारा घर मॉर्गेज पे रखो, गिरवी रखो, और any asset you give it as a security, ताकि अगर तुमने पेमेंट नहीं किया, बैंक can sell that asset and encash them. So secured loan means those loans where there is a security attached. So जिसने तुमको पैसा दिया है, उसके पास सेफ्टी है कि if you don't repay, they can encash the security and take them. So that is secured. Secured loan means that loan against which there is a security. Example of secured. If they give you only bank loan, it is always secure. Debentures, you all know, you will have done it in SYBCOM. Company can issue debentures. If nothing is mentioned, debentures are always secured. Unless and until question says unsecured debentures. So bank loans, loans taken from financial institutions, issue of debentures, all these are a part of secured loan. Or any other loan taken from any other company where there is a security attached, it is secured. अगर question में एक ही secured loan है, you will put it straight away in the second column. If in the question there is only one secured loan, put it in the second column. अगर एक से ज़्यादा है, so put them in the first column and then उसका total take it in the second column. Getting it? अगर एक से ज़्यादा है, तो put them in the first column and then take it in the second column. I have given you the list in the detailed form. Got it? Now, borrowed funds in two parts. First secured, second will be unsecured. First secured, second will be unsecured. Now you can make out from the word only. जो security नहीं है, मतलब जो secured नहीं है, जिसके सामने there is no security, that becomes unsecured. जिसके सामने there is no security, that becomes unsecured. Company can issue fixed deposits. हम लोग जो बैंक में करते हैं वो हमारे लिए asset है. But as a company, I can issue fixed deposits, which is also called as public deposits. I issue deposits, certificates. People will pay me money. Every year I'll pay them interest. But that is always unsecured. So, issue of public deposits, issue of fixed deposits. Sometimes company takes loan from directors and staff also. On that they pay high interest. So loans from directors, all that comes under unsecured. Loan from friends and relatives. Of course, company is not a human being. So company के केस में friends and relatives नहीं होता है, but directors के किसी और individual से लिया. You take loans from any individuals, directors के friends या किसी से, all that comes in unsecured. So secured loan is that loan against which there is some security attached. Unsecured में there is no security. As I told you, public deposit, fixed deposits, loan from directors, or any other loan where there is no security. Again the same thing. If there is only one unsecured loan, put it in the second column. एक से ज़्यादा है, do the same thing. First column में लिख के सबका total. Got it? So, second column में क्या आया? Secured loan, unsecured loan. There are only two parts. Now, borrowed funds is classified in two categories, secured, unsecured. So now, total of secured loan total of unsecured loan. This total you will take it here. What I told you, sources के two parts. First, proprietors funds. Second, borrowed funds. Proprietors funds divided in three parts: share capital plus reserves less miscellaneous expenditure. Borrowed funds divided in two parts: secured loan, unsecured loan. Got it? Now what you will do? Listen very carefully. We are now approaching 50% of the balance sheet. ये वीडियो थोड़ा एक्सटेंड हो रहा है, but understand, if you understand this, 60% of the sum balance sheet sums are done in your room. Now what you will do? The total of these two, the total of proprietors funds and the total of borrowed funds, the total of proprietors funds and the total of borrowed funds will be your balance sheet total, which we call it as capital employed. We call it as capital employed, and the other word is, you can also call it as total funds employed. Capital employed or total funds. ये आगे जाके ratios में भी आएगा. So in short, capital employed or total funds employed is proprietors funds and borrowed funds. याद रखना. Third column is for the final answer. So proprietors funds third column में, borrowed funds third column में, and the grand total of two capital employed also third column. So capital मतलब business में कितना पैसा लगा हुआ है, कितना पैसा लगा हुआ है, दो जगह से आए. खुद का पैसा proprietors funds, किसी से borrow किया हुआ है. Got it guys? Now after sources, now I come to application. अभी देखो, इसमें there is no debit credit, so keep on writing one below the other, no problem at all. ये vertical format है, इसमें debit credit नहीं होता है. So अगर तुम्हारा पेज बचता है, you can continue below this, or if you want to take it on the next page, take it on the next page. But when we do the sums, we will be putting one below the other. अगर suppose actual sum solve किया, capital employed मेरा first page यहाँ पे खत्म हुआ, below only you can start with application. So now I take the second part, that is application of funds. Second part, that is application of funds. What is application? Sources मतलब कहाँ से पैसा आया. Application means जो पैसा आया वो मैं कहाँ पे यूज कर रहा हूँ, कहाँ पे अप्लाई कर रहा हूँ. That is application of funds. So the funds what I get, what I have with me, where I am using it, where I am utilizing it, where I am applying it, that is application of funds. Okay, that's application. 1 minute, I just have water. 1 minute. Okay guys, second part, application of funds. What I told you, whatever are my sources where I am going to utilize. Suppose इसका total in the example like 50 लाख 50 lakhs है, तो you have to show वो 50 lakhs कहाँ use हुआ. In short, 50 lakhs कहाँ से आया, 50 lakhs कहाँ use किया. Sources was divided in two parts: proprietors funds, borrowed funds. Application will be divided in three parts. I gave you the brief. Now we will do it. First part, application का first part is fixed assets. Application का first part is fixed assets. You all are studying since SYBCOM. Fixed assets are long-term assets. Fixed assets divided in two parts: tangible, intangible. SYBCOM का basic. Those assets which you can feel, see, touch, they are tangible, and those which cannot be seen or felt are intangible. Example: इंटैंजिबल में क्या क्या आता है? गुडविल, कॉपीराइट, पेटेंट्स, ट्रेडमार्क, लाइसेंसेस. टैंजिबल, लैंड, बिल्डिंग, फर्नीचर एंड फिक्सचर्स, ये क्लासेस है, यहाँ पे जो बेंचेस एंड चेयर्स है, चेयर्स, कंप्यूटर्स, लैपटॉप्स, कैलकुलेटर्स, plant machinery, all are okay. So fixed assets divided in two parts, tangible, intangible. All of them will be written one below here. Now see, there are few authors and few professors who give the sub classification tangible, intangible. As per your syllabus, that is not required. People do it for extra presentation purpose, but that is not required. So if your college does, you can do, otherwise. So what I do, all tangible, intangible, put one below the other. Okay, goodwill, patents, copyright, trademark, land and building, furniture, fixtures, building, plant and machinery, computers, laptops, desktops, all calculators, all that will come one below the other. Now listen, if there is no depreciation, accumulated depreciation or depreciation, you will put all of them in the second column. And if there is information for depreciation, suppose land and building है, they give you in the question 5 lakh, उसका depre 1 lakh. So 5 lakh inner column में, 1 lakh first column में, मतलब दोनों first column में, 5 minus 1 take the total in the second column. And then whatever fixed assets are appearing in the second column, उसका total will come in the third column. Okay, so where there is no depreciation, put all of them in the second column, and where there is depreciation, deduct depre and then take it out. That is fixed assets. Clear? So application ka first part, fixed assets. And now second, as I told you, second is investments, but the investment what will come here will be long term. So it's better give the heading long term investments. Long term investments. Now here there are a couple of important things I am challenging you. 95% of the people teaching will not elaborate on this point. Long term investments. Now first, what do you mean by long term? Now जो भी बचा है, we need to know long term, short term. Now see, long term मतलब लंबा period, short term मतलब small period. Now, what is the criteria to identify a period as short term and long term? There is no legal condition. There is no legal rule. But accountants and analysts have suggested a criteria of 1 year. So, if there is something more than 1 year, we treat it as long term. And when there is something less than 1 year, we treat it as short term. This is the criteria. Legal condition नहीं है, but these are the norms. 1 साल से ज़्यादा रहेगा, we treat it as long term, and less than 1 year, we treat it as short term. So, when I make an investment, जो बोलूँगा ठीक है, मुझे पैसा अभी नहीं चाहिए, 1 साल या 1 साल से ज़्यादा, 1 साल, 2 साल, 3, 4, 5 साल, 10 साल, 20 साल रहने दो, that is long term investment. But if I invest for a period of less than 1 year, से मैंने किसी को दिया या किधर इन्वेस्ट किया, 6 महीने में मुझे वापस चाहिए, then it won't be long term investment, it will be short term investment जो आगे जाके आएगा. So long term investment means investment made. Now why we make investment? We make investment to earn a return. किसी कंपनी के शेयर्स में इन्वेस्ट करोगे to get capital profit as well as to earn dividend. किसी कंपनी के डिबेंचर्स में इन्वेस्ट किया to get interest. बैंक फिक्स डिपॉजिट्स में इन्वेस्ट किया to get interest. If I invest in a property, I invest to get rent. Now याद रखना guys, this is the important point where I was telling that बहुत सारे जन elaborate नहीं करेंगे. Understand this. If I invest in a building, if I buy a building and that building is used for my business, ध्यान रखना ये point. If I buy building and that building is used for my business, it comes in fixed asset. But If I buy a building or property जो मैं अपने बिजनेस के लिए यूज नहीं करूंगा, किसी को रेंट पे दूंगा, then in that case it cannot be a fixed asset, it will come as long term investment. I'll repeat again. If I buy a building, I'm using it for my own purpose, fixed asset. But if I buy a building not using for my own purpose to give it on rent, then that will be long term investment. So investment in shares, investment in debentures, investment in properties, investment in bank fixed deposits, all of them comes in long term investments. Okay. अगर एक ही है, you can straight away put it in the third column, और अगर एक से ज्यादा है तो second column में लिख के फिर उसका total. So long term investment is the total of investments made to be the amount to be encashed normally after a period of month. I give the example: investment in shares, debentures, investment in properties, fixed deposits. Application, 3 parts. First, fixed assets. Second, long-term investments. And now the third part, working capital. As I told you, you all have a separate chapter in this semester also, BCom, BAF, BMS, all working capital. Now, understand this. Of course, when we come to the chapter working capital, that time we will be doing in detail. Working capital means short-term source of finance. Working capital is a short-term source of finance. Working capital is the money used for conducting day-to-day regular business activities. Working capital is the money used for conducting day-to-day business activity. That means what? Buying goods, selling goods, incurring your day-to-day expenses. जो पैसा लगता है, that is your working capital. It is a short-term source of finance and the money used for day-to-day business activity. Now, working capital, I don't know how many of you all recollect SYJC mein you all had analysis of financial accounts, analysis of accounts. Working capital is nothing but the difference between current assets and current liability. It is the difference between current assets and current liability. I'll tell you step by step. Now, इसके नीचे there will be 2 subheadings. पहला, it is current assets, but we give the name current assets, loans and advances. Even if you write only current assets, चलेगा. Current assets, loans and advances. Now, when I say current, current means nothing but short term. When I say current, current means nothing but short term. Right now only I explained that there is no legal criteria, but generally a period of 1 year is treated as short term, up to 1 year. So those assets which are there in the business and the period of that is short term, that is less than 1 year, that comes under the heading current assets, loans and advances. Example, you all are doing this since SYBCOM. अभी तुम लोग दिमाग लगाओ, assets में क्या क्या बचता है जो अभी तक आया नहीं? Cash in hand, bank balance, stock, sundry debtors, bills receivable, prepaid expenses, advance tax is prepaid expenses. Getting it? So I'll repeat: cash, bank, पैसा आएगा जाएगा, डेली चेंज होते रहेगा, करंट एसेट. स्टॉक आज आया कल गया, आज आया गया, sold, bought, sold, bought, sold, bought, sold, current assets. Debtors, today you sell goods, they will give you money. Again you sell goods, again money keeps on changing regularly. Bill receivable, SYGC का basic, you draw a bill on customer, you get money in 2 months, 3 months, short term. Expenses paid in advance, पैसा मैंने already भर दिया है, जैसे कि prepaid, mobile. Most of you are using prepaid, correct? Prepaid में क्या होता है? First we pay, then we use. अगर ये मैंने कहा मैंने रिचार्ज किया, मैंने पहले भर दिया, I have paid the money in advance. Now for the next 1 month I'll utilize short term. So these are your short term assets. Okay. So cash, bank, stock, debtors, bill receivable, prepaid expenses, all comes in. पूरा list में दिया. Now see. Now all the current assets, you will put it in the first column. All current assets, you will put it in the first column, and the total you will take it in the second column. All current assets, you will put it in the first column, and total you will take it in the second column. From this, what is the main heading? Working capital. So to get the working capital from this, I will have to deduct something called as current liabilities and provision. I'll have to deduct something called as current liability and provision. The word current, same logic. Now ध्यान रखना, I'm coming here. यहाँ पे मैंने वो explain नहीं किया था. I was waiting for this speech. Current liability means short-term liability. Any liability which is to be paid within a period of 1 year is current liability, and which is to be paid after a period of 1 year, then that normally is treated as borrowed funds or funds. तुम्हारे syllabus में था, when we study company final accounts now, BCom students in TY, BAF students in this semester in financial account, there is a legal format as per the Companies Act. There are different heads, but this head, याद रखना, it is specifically only for this subject, management accounting, which is not a compulsory format. This is only for analysis purpose. तो यहाँ पे हमें इतना दिमाग नहीं लगाना है as far as your syllabus is concerned. So any liability which is payable generally within a period of less than 1 year, then that will be classified as current liability and provisions. Now you can make out items on the basis of, बोलो क्या क्या है? Creditors, bills payable, outstanding salary, outstanding rent, outstanding wages, income tax payable, provision for tax, cash and bank either, bank overdraft either, expenses paid in advance either, income received in advance either. Why income in advance? मैंने पैसा ले लिया. Now after taking money, I have to pay, give service. जैसे मैंने example बोला इधर prepaid, you make a recharge, वोडाफोन को दिया, तो तुमने एडवांस में पे किया, वोडाफोन ने एडवांस में लिया ना, सो तुम्हारे बुक्स में यहाँ पे दिखाओगे वोडाफोन यहाँ पे दिखाएगा, because they have taken the money in advance. So income received in advance is a current liability, and expense paid in advance is a current asset. Right now I am explaining the format only. आगे जाके सम में सब कुछ नहीं आएगा, मतलब हेडिंग्स विल बी देयर, बट ये जो मैंने पूरा डिटेल दिखाया पूरा डिटेल नहीं आया. एंड डोंट वरी, just understand 50 to 60%. When I start the main sum, again I am going to go in depth as far as that particular data of the sum is concerned. So don't worry, just understand the basic headings, that is important as of now. Clear? So these are your current liabilities. Same thing, you will put all the current liabilities in the first column and uska total in the second column. And now current assets, ये क्या है? Less. So current assets minus current liability. This figure, what you get, that is your working capital. So current assets minus current liability, the figure what you get, that is your working capital. Okay. So application of funds means fixed assets plus long-term investments plus working capital. And working capital क्या है? Current assets minus current. Now what is this balance sheet? So now what will happen? Fixed assets plus investments plus working capital. This total is your balance sheet total, and same thing you will write for the first part, that is capital employed, or what you can do, you can write instead of total funds employed, you can also write total funds employed, or you can use the word total funds utilized. But it's okay, alternate way में, even if you just write capital employed, it is fine. Now as I told you, अगर इसका टोटल 50 लाख है तो ये भी 50 लाख होना ही चाहिए. अगर इसका टोटल 1 करोड़ है, this also has to be 1 crore. बैलेंस शीट है, एंड ऑफ द डे कौन सा भी रहे, normal T format horizontal balance sheet or this vertical format, end में both the sides have to tally. वहाँ पे liability assets T form, यहाँ पे sources and application both have to tally. So that is the concept. So capital employed means the money invested in business. पैसा कहाँ से आया? That is sources of funds. And कहाँ पैसा apply किया? That is application of funds. Both sides you call it as capital employed, or you can also call it as total funds employed as both the sides, or यहाँ पे total funds employed and यहाँ पे total funds utilized. Don't bother much about the names, whatever you like to use, or if you're going as per your college, the word college gives, use that word to be on the safe side. Alright guys, so this was vertical balance sheet. This was the Proforma, the format of vertical balance sheet. I'll repeat, vertical balance sheet divided in two parts, sources and application. Sources further in three parts, proprietors fund, which we also call it as shareholders funds, owners funds. In that three parts, share capital plus reserves minus fictitious, that is miscellaneous expenditure. Second part of sources, borrowed funds, we also call it as loan funds or owed funds, divided in two parts, secured loan, unsecured loan. Total of proprietors funds and borrowed funds gives you capital. Application, three parts, fixed assets, long-term investments, third working capital. Working capital is the difference between current assets and current liabilities. So current assets minus current liability is my working capital. Clear with this guys? And total liabilities. Please listen to the video again. Roughly glance कर लेना वापस if you have not followed. And I am repeating again. Even if you have understood 60%, it is fine. आगे जाके when I do one or two sums, automatically सब clear हो जाएगा. And don't worry, I have discussed the full format. पूरा format तुम्हारे सामने में आने वाला नहीं है. They will give you selected. Now say for example, in the list you have current assets के 8-9 items. 8-9 नहीं आएंगे. सब में 2 या 3 या 4 ही रहेंगे. Fixed assets 8-10 दिया है. 2, 3, 4 only will come. So selected item will come under. That's it guys. I wind up this session here. In the next class, we will be doing sums on balance sheet only. Around 4 to 5 classes, approximately 4 to 5 will be for balance sheet. After that, same way I will discuss the full income statement, vertical income statement, that is trading P&L को vertical में कैसे convert करना. We call it as vertical income statement or revenue statement. I will devote one lecture for that. And then there will be another 4 sessions to do sums on vertical income statement, and then there will be sums combined on balance sheet and income. So without knowing individual balance sheet, without doing individual P&L income statement, you cannot do the combined sums. So that's it guys. I wind up here. See you all in the next class where we will be starting sums on vertical balance sheet, the Proforma or the format what I have discussed. Before that, if possible, please try to see this video again so that you can be confident and comfortable when you do that. That's it guys. Take care. See you all in the next class.